Welcome to Needham School Spotlight. I'm Dan Goodykant, Superintendent of Schools. Joining me today are several folks who are involved in, I think, some of our best programming in the Needham community, our special education programming. I'd like to welcome Rebecca Johnson, who is the director of our preschool. Welcome. Mary Lammy, who is our director of student development, director of student support services, and our co-chair of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or CPAC, Hillary Brule. Welcome. And I'd also like to welcome and congratulate our new Director of Special Education, K-8, who was appointed by the school committee recently. Welcome to Matt Gannis.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for all being here this morning. This morning I want us to check in on special education programming in Needham because we have such a great, rich program for our kids and for our families. We also want to talk a little bit about the preschool. And we've got a wonderful preschool in town that Rebecca is leading beginning this year, and we're excited to talk about that. I thought, though, first, Mary, maybe you can take us through a little bit. What is special education in the Needham Public Schools? I mean, what's the continuum? When does it begin? When does it end? And what's in between?
Sure, absolutely. It actually begins at the preschool. By law, we are required to provide special education services for students when they turn 3, so on their 3rd birthday. We want to be sure that if a student or a child requires special education in order to learn and make good progress around any kind of the skills that they need to, that we're starting that right off at age 3. And education for most of our students goes up right through grade 12. For a smaller population of our students, it goes even past that till age 22. Most of our students are fully included. They're in all of our schools across Needham. Again, starting at the preschool, we do provide, whether it be direct instruction or supports in the classroom, a lot of work with our gen ed teachers to be sure that all students' needs are being met in the classroom. That's where most of our students through special education are doing well and are receiving the programming that they need. And then as far as the continuum, we do have specialized programs across most of our schools, and that really allows us to differentiate and provide more structure, more specialization for students if the gen ed classroom is not going to be the only place that their needs are met. So to keep it relatively simple, starting from preschool going all the way up to the high school, we have a specialized program for students with autism or similar learning profiles. We have a specialized program for students who have language-based learning needs. We call that the language-based program. We also have specialized programming for students with either emotional disabilities or challenges really around their social emotional skills or ability to cope, ability to stay regulated, and that is our therapeutic program model that starts at the elementary level and goes all the way up.
Wow, I mean, it's a rich array of programming to support a wide variety of needs among our children. Matt, one area that program I'm hoping we can all talk about a little bit is our Insite program, which supports students with autism, which is a K-12 program. But in your role, currently as Assistant Director of Special Education, you're working in a variety of different initiatives. But in your new role that you'll be assuming soon, what responsibility will you have in all of this? What are some of the key programming areas, K-8, that you'll be looking at and working on?
You know, first and foremost, one of the things that we need to look at is our transitions from building to building as our programs go. So as Mary said, we have a continuum K-12, but really we need to focus some of our energy and efforts on the transition from our ELC programs, our autism programs at the elementary school to High Rock and then to Pollard, and then from Pollard to the high school. That's one big area of focus, making sure that students who may have difficulties with transitions to begin with aren't thrown another challenge their way because of that school-based transition. And the other thing is really looking at our wraparound services and how we are using our board-certified behavior analysts, our BCBAs that are in district, and what we're doing for students in terms of home services and parent trainings, and making sure that we are providing students with all of the work and support that they need to be successful in school.
Folks think about schooling as traditionally a 180 days, September till June, and unless the snow never ends, it'll be longer. But and a 9 to 2 school day, and kids go home, and that's it. But home services are part of the responsibility of the district, and summer services. Can you what do those look like for some of our children?
Well, they can look very different student to student. Some of our students have a couple of hours of home services per week, where a BCBA or another type of provider will go into the home, work with the family and the student directly. Other students have more intensive hours, and it really depends on the student profile and the individual needs. And in terms of summer programming, that also transitions into the summer and what we're providing for students. Some of our students require a full year program with very minimal breaks in their scheduling, their ed scheduling, and that's something that we see as well. And really it comes down to being individualized based on the student needs and what they're presenting with and what they require.
Obviously, parents are a huge part of this equation. And in fact, I suppose that if you use the old metaphor, a three-legged stool, parents are one of the legs, and the staff, and then the student. So everybody working together to really support that child. Tell us a little bit about CPAC, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. What role does that play, and what specifically is your role with CPAC?
Well, CPAC is a parent group, and we perform 3 main functions, which is to provide education, input, and support in the form of networking. So we have monthly educational meetings at night, and we cover a wide variety of topics. Some of them might be very specific to issues of special needs pertinent to a certain diagnosis. We also go on broader topics that might be of interest to parents whose children might not receive special services through the school, but might be concerned about how homework's going at home, or anxiety, or issues with reading. We also meet monthly with the directors and are able to give feedback and input on a lot of the programs. I think a lot of our parents will be really interested in being part of the conversation about these transitions from school to school and what does that look like, because that's a concern that parents have. And to your point, we have some insights when we see the kids come home from school and see how they're reacting sort of after a school day. We have some additional information that we can add to the conversation. I personally feel like the most important piece of CPAC is the networking and the connecting parents to each other. It can sometimes be very isolating to be the parent of a child with special needs, especially depending on when you realize that you are the parent of a child with special needs. Some people know from the day their child's born, and other people receive a diagnosis in elementary school or middle school. And it's really important to have a network of other parents who you can turn to for support and advice and benefit from their experience. I am always amazed by the information and the knowledge and the resources to be found among the full group of parents. And if I have a question, I send it out to the group of parents and I ask them if they might know of a supplier or a resource that I could go to, maybe a therapist, or if they have information, a great book they might know on the topic, that our parents really are the best resource for other parents, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. And to have somebody to lean on and someone to talk to, especially if you have a concern or this is unfamiliar territory for you. And I think one of the things we're trying to do is as we welcome parents to the Needham Public Schools is develop a sense of trust and connection that really begins back at the preschool. That's kind of our gateway, our entry point for our students. So tell us about our preschool program. Where is it? Who is it for? It's an integrated program. What does that mean? Who are we serving? And are there opportunities for people to join our preschool?
Absolutely.
Well, tell us about that.
So, like Mary was saying, the relationship that Needham families have really starts in the preschool, and we take that responsibility very seriously. We are working with families before their children even turn 3 to really educate them about developmental expectations, to talk to them about what they need to know about their children going to the public schools. One of the most important elements of our program is really the staff. We have a highly dedicated, highly qualified staff, and we really, I think it's indicative of Needham's commitment to early childhood. Our teachers are highly qualified. We have at least 2 teaching assistants in each classroom, and we have a team of dedicated therapists, which is huge. We have our speech pathologist team, our physical therapist, occupational therapist, our behavior analyst. So there's a lot of resources that we have that we dedicate toward the children. The nice thing about the integrated program is that the teachers are really able to differentiate their instruction to any kind of learner. And that means that if your child is receiving those services, they're able to get them, but other children are able to benefit as well. For example, our physical therapist does motor groups for all the children. Our speech pathologists do language groups. Our music therapist comes in and does music therapy groups. So we're really able to help a lot of different students access our programming, and that's one of the reasons we're really excited about our early childhood program and our preschool. And we do have some limited openings available for the fall, which is very exciting, and parents can actually go on the Needham Public Schools website and then access the preschool website, and that's a great way to get in touch with us. We're doing tours for families that might be interested, and we're also...
One of the tours.
Yes, so the tours are available on request, and we're also doing a visiting day on Tuesday, March 31st at 1 o'clock. So families will be getting more information about that.
For families, there is a tuition for children. What
There
does
is a
that look like?
tuition. The tuition is just about $3,000 for our 3-day program and about $4,000 for our 4-day program. That's for the year, and that's very competitive with the other programs in town, which is a really nice thing. A lot of those programs are having our staff consult with their programs for things that have come up with their students, and we're really able to provide those services in-house if kids need them.
Well, and it's at, one of the things that's exciting about our preschool, it's located in Newman. It has a kind of a dedicated area of Newman,
Right.
which is on a beautiful campus. I was at a meeting the other night where we were talking about renovating completely the conservation area, the Eastman Conservation Area, which
Right.
is right behind the preschool. So it's a really lovely location. A brand new play area has been installed there. So it's a great place where children are really beginning their years in the Needham Public Schools in a positive way.
Yes.
Well, we want to talk more about that. You mentioned, Matt, something about, and Hillary, transitions between schools. There's a challenge, you said, in transitioning between schools, and Matt, that's something that you're very keen on thinking about. What does that mean? What does that look like, the transitions between schools?
Really, for some of our students, those transitions can be difficult. They're leaving schools, particularly at the elementary level, where they may have spent 5 years or even 6 years, and then they're going off to High Rock, and that can be a little bit unnerving for some of our students. So really, the work from the administrative level is our coordinators working with other building coordinators and students and their families to make sure that we can do everything possible to help students transition into their new buildings with relative ease, because we certainly don't want to throw another roadblock in their way in terms of what the transition can look like. And here in Needham, we work closely with CPAC, and we think about the resources that we have on the outside. Occasionally we consult with outside personnel and contracted service providers to think about what transitions could look like, and we make sure that our programs are ready for students. That's something else that we do. And really just the partnership with our parents, our families, is really quite important to those transitions, and making sure that we're doing everything possible so that students are comfortable.
Dan, I could add that, as a district, through our general ed supports and just the practices that we have there, we do a lot around supporting students and families to transition from grade level to grade level, so elementary to middle to high. What we do in special education is take that baseline process and really tailor it for certain students or certain groups of students. So we might add additional visit days for students, from elementary going to High Rock. We certainly have the two teams from High Rock and elementary coming together and talking about the student. We have our parents go and visit. We have our parents provide us input. We use our summer time as an opportunity for students to maybe spend a little bit more quiet time in a building, getting used to the lay of the land, the locker combination, things like that. And that does make a difference for some of our kids that struggle with transitions.
So Hillary, as you think about this conversation and transitions, I often say to parents, and think this myself, and reflecting as a parent of 3 daughters, that sometimes the transitions seem to be harder on mom and dad than they are on children. But nonetheless, there are some concerns. And beyond transitions, just supporting your child in school, what are some things that you look to the schools to provide in helping your child be successful? And what are you hearing from parents that they need from the Needham schools to really help their children be successful?
Well, I just want to say it's funny that you said that about transitions being difficult for the parents, because I was thinking that as Matt was talking, and I think that when you talk about the three-legged stool, there is the school, the child, and the parent, and the parent has their own concerns and their own issues that almost need to be a part of the conversation when we're talking about what's best for the child, because we all have our. I think what happens is there's so much emotion involved for the parents. The stakes are so high for us as we're looking for the support for our children. And I think, and you brought it up, the most important piece is the trust among the team, that everyone has the child's best interest in mind. And I feel like sometimes the team functions the best when the trust is really there, and the parent can have the trust to give the team a little bit of space to try some stuff out. Maybe they have a new tactic or a new strategy they want to try with the child, and you need to put the trust in them to give them the opportunity to try that, and trust in the parent also to be candid if something may not be working so well, and we tried this, we're not happy with the way it went, we're going to try something different. That's trust back to the parent, and that, I think, is the most important piece of having everybody working together to support the student.
Mary, sometimes folks say to me when I'm talking to parents as they're trying to support their children in school, or I talk to principals and teachers or members of the community, is there anything that the district is doing to perhaps not have a child immediately go to a referral for special education services, but is there some other intermediary step that will provide some services and support? What is the district trying to do?
Absolutely. I mean, it's certainly far beyond Needham, but there's a process referred to as response to intervention, RTI, and that the kind of process around RTI exists in all of our buildings. It looks different depending on the building. Something that we're striving to work towards is a bit more consistency and transparency around that process for not only ourselves as an educational organization, but for our parent community. And what something like an RTI process allows is through general education, for there to be data tracking, and it could be as simple as observation and teacher input, et cetera, that helps us to identify any at-risk observations when it comes to reading or academics in general, social emotional as well. And then to be able to provide supports or intervention. It might be instruction, it might be additional instruction in a very time-limited manner. So you might think about a student who is not quite on the mark around early reading skills in, let's say, first grade. And so an intervention team can look to see, well, what intervention might make sense for this particular child, implement an intervention for a certain period of time. Maybe it's 8 weeks, maybe it's 12 weeks, whatever it might be, come back, look at how the progress is going, tweak, and go from there. The important part about any kind of general education intervention is you've got to monitor it and you've got to use data. And if you're not seeing the progress that you would expect, that's when a referral should be happening. So RTI is never meant to be a substitute for special education referral or special education in general, and it shouldn't stall the process. If there's enough evidence there or enough concern there that a disability exists, we absolutely want to jump on that. The earlier the better as far as special education services.
What I'm hearing is that what we're striving to do, and I know, Matt, that you have a particular interest in doing this, that making sure that every school has a system of support, a response to help all children learn, and if for some reason there are particular needs, if the data suggests otherwise, then we may need to do a referral. But we want to try to see what we can do as a school community to first address some of those needs. I know, Matt and Becca, that one of the things that's very important to you and to certainly Hillary and Mary is developing an alignment of programs that's really strong. Mary, you've been involved in this. Becca, it begins at the preschool. Maybe you can talk about a little bit our Insite program, which is our program for students with autism. Just for a couple moments to share with us, what is that all about? It goes pre-K through postgraduate. Is that correct, Mary?
Yes.
Some folks may not know that we, as you said earlier, we educate some students until they're 22, beginning when they're 3. What is the Insite program? Who's it for? And tell us what's happening at the preschool.
So one thing that we know is that the diagnosis does not define a child. So we have children coming to us with many different strengths, some areas that they're working on, and what we really try to do is create programming for them. And so we start that at the preschool. If we have students coming in that are on the autism spectrum, that have medical involvement, one thing that we know is that they can all look very different. And not just that, but they can look very different a year from then, a couple years later. It can really be a continuum. So we are trying to develop programming to meet those students' needs, and also to really be educating the families and letting them know what they need to do and what to expect.
And what else is where do we continue with Insite all the way up through?
We have different names of programs across the levels. I think it comes from a place of a developmental place. So starting in the preschool, we have a particular strand that for students, again, that either have autism or similar learning profiles. And the key to the program is a bit more structure, a bit more data, shorter stretches of time where you're looking at data and making changes to the instruction. There can be some positive behavior planning for students that either lack the social skills or motivational pieces that sometimes comes with a profile like autism, and really helps to get them motivated and engaged with people and learning. We refer from preschool up through 5th grade to our autism strand as ELC, or Early Learning Center programming. And then when the students transition up to middle school, they really branch out to Insite or other program options that exist. And that, it's just like Becca was saying, every year in multiple times during the year, we're looking at how our students are doing, what they're doing as far as progress, are they hitting benchmarks, and what kind of programming do they need going forward. So is it still within a more smaller classroom with a lot of the specialized instruction like our ELC or Insite programming provides, or are they fully included, needing some additional related services and maybe some specific goals around their challenges that they might have around social skills, et cetera. So what happens with Insite is you're not so contained when you get up to the middle and high school. You're really now in the fold of middle school and high school, but it's tailored. There's specific components to the Insite program that allows for students to have anchored time within their school day and school week.
And it's individualized based on their needs as well. Well, I know that as we wrap up this conversation, that it's very important to you, and I know it is to Matt, to really be thinking broadly about the vertical alignment, pre-K through 12 or PG of programming. I know that that's something that you're both very much focused on, and there are other areas that you'll want to hit upon. Is there one other area you're thinking about this new role you're in that quickly you can share with us that you'll be thinking about?
Our emotional and therapeutic programming. Right now in the district we have programs actually beginning at grade 2 for students with emotional disabilities, running all the way up through graduation. And really we're looking at how can we provide some programming for students earlier on. There are students that have been identified earlier than second grade for therapeutic programming and the supports that we need to provide to them. And as we look to our programming, again, we have different names as we go up through the levels. That comes from a developmental standpoint, certainly. But there are different aspects of these programs, the supports, the counseling supports, the wraparound mental health services that are all components of these programs that we're going to really look to strengthen and to make sure that as students, again, jump level to level, they still have access to those supports and we can still tailor individual programs for them.
Well, and bringing that back to the piece about transitions, that will be so important that and parents will, I presumably, develop more confidence and trust in the system if they know that from building to building, program to program, there is a strand that is consistent with a vision and goals that will meet that child's needs. And we're gonna kind of wrap up here fairly quickly. But Hillary, what is something that you would like the Needham schools to be thinking about regarding special education services as we move forward? What's one thing that comes to mind that we can be?
That's a big one. You know, I think one of the issues that's been coming up over the course of the budget discussions is this idea of the emotional and mental health and the therapeutic services, and really, in terms of response to intervention, looking at trying to find some warning signs and catch those kids earlier, because we know that a lot of this is kind of hitting at the high school, and we'd really love to get some help with that before then. So I think that our CPAC members are really looking forward to being a part of that conversation, because I know that's really on the radar for the district, and we're looking forward to working together on that.
Well,
I think on
that note, that's what's most powerful about the Needham Public Schools in the community. Parents wanting to work in partnership with the staff to make rich programming has been described here happen. Well, some takeaways from me in our conversation, that developing trust and communication is key for parents to partner with the Needham Public Schools. Matt, Mary, and Becca are thinking about developing a strand of really rich programming pre-K through 12, which is very important. And then our preschool program. We're very excited we have a few spots. We want to welcome the community to join us. Yes. There's an open house Tuesday, March 31st. Mm-hmm. What time is the open house? 1 o'clock. And will folks be able to see the preschool in action, or will the day be concluded by then?
It's an early release day for us.
Okay.
We thought it was most important to have the staff available so that we could talk about our programming.
That's great. So I think that's wonderful for folks to understand that our preschool great program is the gateway to what we're doing to provide services for children. Well, I appreciate your time this morning, and thanks for joining me and sharing your work and these insights. Thank you.